Is it just me, or do cults never end well? Because I feel like every single one that I hear about always ends in a disaster. But am I only hearing about it because it ends in a disaster? Are there cults that are good, and am I not hearing of those because they're doing well, so that means they're good? I'm overwhelmed. This is a story of the Anthill Kids, a cult that you probably have never heard of, and the worst that I think I've heard of. It takes place in Canada. I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name. I'm just gonna put it on the screen, and I'm gonna refer to him as Rock. I'm gonna say Rock. Rock was born in Canada to his mom and dad. They had 8 kids, and he was the second oldest. As a child, Rock was considered to be very sweet, very kind, and very, very smart. However, he was only 13 years old when he dropped out of school, and we don't really know why. He kind of just stopped attending. Throughout his teenage years, he was a very well-liked person. He had a lot of friends, and he also had a lot of girls that liked him. They found him attractive. Jumping forward to 1967, at this point of the story, Rock is 21 years old, and he gets a wife who is only 17 years old. Obviously, it sounds concerning, but I think that they were happy. They both wanted to be together. They ended up having 2 kids together. Rock had a job to support the family, and it seemed like they were living a pretty normal life. Around this time, Rock was having stomach issues, and he had to get surgery for them, but the surgeries were not helping. If anything, they were just making it worse. And I want to say that at that point of his life is when Rock lost all trust on medicine. He started researching and studying medicine for himself. He wanted to learn about it, and he would preach about how medical staff were wrong and they were dumb, but he was right, and he wanted to lecture people about medicine and about what he learned, because he was so smart and the doctors were dumb, according to him. After 7 years of marriage, Rock's wife finds out that he has not been loyal, so they end up getting a divorce. She says, "Peace out, I'm out," and honestly, good for her. I bet she was extremely glad that she left after we find out what he does. When the wife leaves, Rock says that's fine, and he just ends up marrying the girl that he cheated on his wife with. Throughout his second marriage, Rock continues his obsession over medicine and all things health related. He also becomes really obsessed with religion, and he becomes a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Very quickly, he became a very active member of his church. He would go around door knocking on people's houses to tell them about his religion. He also started preaching at church, and people loved him, and that made Rock feel giddy inside almost. He absolutely loved the attention. When he was on a retreat with his church, he went off on a walk by himself, and when he came back to the group, he told them that he had received a message from God. And from that point on, Rock referred to himself as being a messenger of God. The biggest message that he got from God was that the end of the world was coming, but not only that, he also had healing powers. God, according to him, had given him the power to heal, and he could also bring people back to life, which is great. I wish I could do that. That's kind of how his 2 biggest passions in life, medicine and religion, came together to form this new strong belief that ends up becoming his entire personality. And he would talk about it to anyone and everyone that would listen to him, and at this point he was still a member of the church, but his head was getting too big because he really thought that he was a chosen one. He thought that he had all of these superpowers, he had visions and messages from God, and he would get so passionate and so fired up about it that it almost seemed like he was trying to take over the church. He wanted to be the leader, but he wanted to be the only leader, and because that's not how it works, he soon got kicked out of the church. When he got kicked out, he wanted to take his followers with him, the people from the church that loved and adored him and looked up to him. And some way, somehow, he was able to convince a group of people to drop their entire lives, leave everything behind, their jobs, their families, drop it all and go follow him wherever he went. And some did. This is pretty much when the cult began. And at the beginning of it, it was made up of Rock, his second wife, 13 adults, and approximately 10 children. Now Rock has this group of followers that are willing to follow him, but where will they live? Surely he's not planning on just buying a normal house in a normal neighborhood and shoving everyone in there, right? Right. Instead, he takes the group hiking up a mountainside that he called the Eternal Mountain. See, English is weird because what do you mean mountain is a word? Mountain, the Eternal Mountain. Anyway, in the middle of nowhere, and that was where they were going to be settling down. On the mountain, Rock made his followers build a camp with their bare hands. He was sitting down on a chair, ordering them around to go find supplies around the mountain, things that they could use to build tents, and he also sent them off to go find food or anything that they could use as food. And while he sat on his butt and did nothing, he was watching all of his people running around the mountain, and he thought that they looked like ants, which is when he came up with the cult's name, the Anthill Kids. Rock gave all of his followers new names, biblical names. He also made them wear the same uniform so they were all matching at all times. He would ration their food as a form of control. And he completely banned his followers to have any sort of contact with anyone from the outside world. But not only that, because Rock made a rule that his cult members could not even talk to each other. They couldn't communicate within themselves unless Rock was there and he was present listening to whatever they were saying. He wanted to have complete control, and not long after arriving at the mountain, he thought of another great idea. The idea that he should should have multiple wives. So Rock decided to marry every single female in the group, and slowly but surely every single one of them started to fall pregnant. In total, on the mountain, Rock became a father to 22 children. Remember when we mentioned that Rock had received a message from God that the world was ending? Well, the end of the world was supposed to be in February of 1979. That's what God told him, and that's what he was telling his followers. But when February of 1979 came and went and the world didn't end, Rock explained to his followers that he got something confused because the messages from God can be a little bit hard to understand, because when it comes to time moves differently for God than it does for people on earth. Some of his followers believed him that he just got the date wrong, but others started to question him. They weren't so sure. They thought maybe this guy is full of shit. But Rock had put way too much effort into building this cult. He wasn't going to risk it all falling apart because some of his followers did not believe him after he lied about the world ending. So in order to keep control over his followers, Rock turned to violence. If he ever felt that any of his followers were being distant, he would use things such as a hammer or a belt to harm them physically, and he would force them to eat dead mice and feces as another form of punishment. If they misbehaved or if they did anything wrong, he would force them to harm themselves. At times, even forcing some of them to break their own legs using things such as a sledgehammer, and also sometimes force them to cut off each other's toes. Another form of punishment that he often used was forcing them to sit on hot stoves. And as far as the children, Rock would SA them consistently. If they misbehaved, he would either hold them above fire or he would nail them to a tree by their clothing. He would order the other children to throw stones and rocks at the child that was hanging from the tree. Rock would express that kind of behavior and cruelty towards his followers often, but the morning after he would break down crying and ask for forgiveness. This went on for about 3 years before anyone noticed. A little bit over 3 years into it, a 2-year-old baby boy lost his life on that mountain. The little boy was named Samuel, and he was suffering from injuries from the violence that he had been experiencing. To cure his injuries, because Rock thought that he could heal people, he decided that he was going to operate on him. He was going to give him surgery on that mountain using nothing but a pair of scissors. Obviously, that did not go to plan, and unfortunately baby Samuel lost his life. Shortly after, a man from the cult managed to escape. He went to authorities and he told them everything, including about the death of baby Samuel. When police heard that, they immediately went to the mountain to go raid the cult. They arrested Rock. Other members were arrested as well for the parts that they played in Samuel's death. However, Rock did not get charged for murder. For some reason, he only got charged for criminal negligence, and he does get sentenced and he does go to prison, but he only serves 14 months. You would think that him going away for 14 months would be the end of the story, right? No, 14 months came and went, and Rock got released and he just went back on the mountain. The cult was right back to where it started. His followers have stayed loyal to him. They were waiting for him. It's 1984 now, and to avoid getting caught by authorities again, Rock decides to move his group to a different secluded area. Over time, his behavior and the punishments kept getting increasingly more extreme and violent, and sadly, there was another little baby that lost his life at the hands of Rock and at the hands of his own mother, one of Rock's wives. Authorities were made aware that Rock had not stopped, that this was still going on, but only in a different location now, and in 1985, authorities raided the mountain and they found the cult. And finally, I don't know why this took so long, but they finally removed the children from the cult to find them new homes, but the adults stayed and things just got worse. The punishments that Rock inflicted on his followers and the things that he would force his followers to do on each other, I physically cannot get myself to say them out loud. They are so incredibly disturbing. I can't say them. If you want to research them, feel free to, but fair warning, it is absolutely terrible. Trust me when I tell you, you'll probably have nightmares. Rock never stopped with his operations. He never stopped performing surgery. He would do it on so many of his followers, and in 1989, one of those surgeries would end in the death of a woman. Things that Rock did to that woman when she was alive, during surgery, and even after she was already deceased are some of the most disturbing things I have ever heard, if not the most disturbing. They are truly unspeakable. Every single person in that cult suffered an incredible amount of pain, both physically and emotionally. And it got to be enough. All of the followers and all of the adults, they had enough. They decided that this needed to come to an end immediately, but any time that they would try and escape, their punishments would just get worse and worse, if that's even possible. One night, a woman named Gabrielle finally managed to escape. She was successful in her escape, and she ran immediately to a hospital because her arm had been chopped off by Rock. And she tells them everything, and an arrest is put out for Rock. However, it would take authorities 6 weeks to find him because he went on the run. But eventually they did, and now we are here in 1989, 11 years of the Ant Hill cult existing, and Rock gets charged and sentenced to only 12 years in prison. However, when authorities did go to the campsite and they saw proof of how they were living and of everything else that had been happening, he received additional charges and was ultimately sentenced to life in prison. In 2011, Rock was found dead in his cell. His cellmate had ended his life. And when the cellmate ended his life, he just walked over to prison staff and he said, quote, "That piece of shit is down on the range. Here's the knife. I've sliced him up," end quote. Yeah. I'll give you a moment. I know that was a lot. Insane, so disturbing, and the things that I did mention are not even the tip of the iceberg of what really was going on in that camp. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you for spending time with me today. I hope you're having the best day. If not, go do something that makes you happy, make somebody happy. I love you so much, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.